and then we're going to do a little passage analysis. So we talked about conflicts in this play. And we said Ruth's conflict, yesterday we filled it in, is this abortion idea. And now we have confirmation. We weren't 100% sure, but Ruth has told us. She's put down money on it. Now, you might be looking at this going, $5, like that's nothing. Remember, we're talking about 1950, where Travis needed 50 cents to go to school. Like, $5, good bit of money here. That's their struggle. What does Mama expect Walter to do?
Tell Ruth, no, don't get an abortion.
Exactly. What quote did we write down from Act 1 that should be here in the background of all of this conversation?
What Big Walter said.
Yeah, on your chart, you should have written down what Big Walter said about how God seems to have given Black people nothing but dreams, but he gave us children to make those dreams seem worthwhile. We have Mama, who's a very religious woman, who is looking at her son going, be a man, stand up. And he does nothing. Some productions end Act 1 before Mama has the chance to say, you're a disgrace, with Walter actually leaving. Remember, Walter has been itching to leave the apartment and to get out. And so some choose to end the act with him walking out rather than saying anything. We also see a second conflict here. Oh gosh, I didn't write that right. We're going to examine this conflict a lot closer today. Walter and Mama's back and forth. Walter sees himself as the man of the house. Once his father died, now he is in control. Mama sees herself as the matriarch of the family, that she is in control, that respect should be given. By the end of the act, even though they fight back and forth and argue about who's in control, who is?
Mama.
Notice that Walter is given the chance to stand up and be that man, and he chooses to do nothing. One thing that we will examine as we go through the rest of this play, and we'll even talk about it today, is this concept of manhood. And that is one of Walter's biggest struggles, is coming into his own, but understanding what a man truly is and how he should act. If we look at a normal plot diagram, we've said this before, plot diagrams tend to look like this, where we front load and spend a lot of time on this side of the climax. We build lots and lots of tension. Our climax happens, and then we very quickly end. This first act is probably here because what we notice is by the end of the act, we are really ratcheting things up. The introduction and definition of Ruth's abortion, the fact that Walter doesn't stand up, also Mama's decision. How else did Mama win this argument about who's in charge?
She said she wanted him the money.
Mama has stated, you ain't getting the money. We're not opening a liquor store. And so Mama has sort of put her foot down and taken control. What we're going to do today is today's assignment in Canvas. So if you pull it up, we're going to analyze the conversation between Mama and Walter. We're going to do some annotating. We're going to do some questions that are alongside here so that we have a good idea of how does this meaning get built up? How do we see the author actually address these things? This is going to lead next week into doing some writing about this. If you're like, it's really easy. It's fill in the blank. It's based on the passage. So it's going to work well together to show us how do we write about literature in a good way. So if you take a look, what we did is we cut out Mama and Walter's speech here. You see that on your screen. We stopped it before the reveal of Ruth's abortion, and we really focus on how these two talk and interact together. I'm going to ask you how you would like to do this today. We can move through here one question at a time, Or if you would like, I can give you a few minutes to see what you can answer first. Then we can come back together and discuss them through. You tell me, would you like to do option 1 where we do it all together? Show me, or option 2 where you have a chance to see what you can do before we talk about it? Let's go with 1, because some of you are there and some of you are never going to get there, and that's all right. So if we look at question 1 at the very top, you will notice that these questions are sort of spaced out so that they are right around where the answer is in this speech. The first question asks about what Mama is hinting at. She says that something is dangerous and then follows it up by saying, when a man goes outside his home to look for peace. What is Mama concerned about? What is she hinting at that Walter may be doing?
Going out and sleeping with June on.
Mm-hmm. So this first question, he's concerned, she's kind of hinting at this idea. She has already said in this act that Big Walter, Walter's father, was kind of loose with women. And so there is a history of cheating in her experience. It's what she assumes, that if Walter keeps trying to run away, he must be running away to someone else. And so she's worried that it's dangerous to look for that kind of comfort outside the home. Well, remember, she also knows that Ruth is pregnant. She's concerned here. And so she's sort of hinting around this. So for that first one, we got to keep in mind, she's framing the conversation in terms of her concern. We don't use a word like dangerous to describe someone's actions unless we're really being serious. We see Walter then talk about there's no woman and we have this there. And then he shifts the conversation. You notice he says, Mama, Mama, I want so many things. If we look at what drives Walter, what are some of the things Walter wants?
His own house.
He wants his own space. I don't know if we need to go to house, but he wants to be able to provide. Think about, if all you've ever done is rent, there's that dream of one day it's yours. You have control of it. What else? Somebody said something different. Something else Walter wants. The liquor store. He sees the liquor store as the means to provide for his family. That gets him a house. That moves him towards ownership and all those things. Are there other things that Walter wants?
He wants Ruth to agree with that.
Yeah. He wants support. He wants to be heard. Remember when he came in before this speech that we're looking at, this section of text? He comes in and he starts to talk about it, and he finally ends up screaming about, will someone listen to me today? Walter feels like he's unheard. Nobody pays attention. Nobody supports him. Nobody has this. Now that goes to his quality of indictment. It's always someone else's fault. But it is a desire that he has. And he's going to explore some of the things that he wants. And Mama is listening and she's engaged here. And so as Walter talks about how it drives him kind of crazy, and he talks about that his job ain't nothing at all. Let's look at question 2. Why does Walter feel that his job ain't nothing at all?
Because he's not making as much.
Okay, he's not making as much.
Because all he does is open and close doors and he drives people around.
Yeah, so explore that a little bit. We see that in there he's saying like all I do is open and close car doors and drive somebody around. Reggie, you want to add?
Because he's working for other people who he's working for himself.
I think there's a really big part to that. He sees the liquor store as a way to control things and to have that. Think about the nature of his job too. If all he's doing is following somebody's orders, if all he is doing is saying yes sir, no sir, do you want to be in a situation where you're subservient to someone else for the rest of your life? Is that a word that we know, subservient? I'll write it down. So 2 parts to the word sub, when we use it as a prefix at the beginning of a word. They didn't give you a target. So when we use sub as a prefix on a word, it is less than. Think about like sub-zero. Servient comes out of the word serve. So if you are subservient to someone else, you are always having to be below them. You are always less than. If you're a chauffeur, how do you get promoted from that job? What's the next step? There isn't. That's the thing. Like, it would be like saying, hey, you're a garbage man. What's the next step up? And you're like, I drive the garbage truck. Like, there's not much of a room for improvement there. And so when he looks at his job, it's not just about the money and it's not just about the fact that it's there. It's that he wants to have some sense of control. And we see that in how he talks as he goes on here. He says, you know, as he presses his mom, he's like, I can't get you to understand. And she says, understand what? And you notice it takes him that time. And we have this note there. He says this line quietly. He says, sometimes it's like I can see the future stretched out in front of me, just plain as day. The future, mama, hanging over there at the edge of my days, just waiting for me. A big, looming blank space full of nothing. Just waiting for me. Now, he says these lines quietly. We've got a guy-heavy class here, so we know that we can ask this question. As males, are we taught that we can open up about how we feel? No, it's not a comfortable thing. And especially when you're looking at something like this, that's a real truth of your existence, where you really have to speak about how you view your life or why you're frustrated. These aren't conversations that we're taught how to have as guys. And that's now. You go back to the 1950s and it's even less so. You know, the strong silent type was very much what everybody was aspiring to be. And so for Walter, he says these lines quietly, not because he's trying to be evasive and not because it's there, but because he's probably never said these things out loud before. And so we look at how he compares his future. For question 3, what does he see his future as?
Like what he wants it to be or like current?
Currently, we just read it. He compares his future to what? Yeah, a big blank space. Full of nothing. Now, I know that we're copying the literal here, but what we notice is that this is a metaphor. Walter's trying to explain how he sees the rest of his life progressing, and to him, there's nothing there because we said there's no promotion from chauffeur. There's no sense that you're going to get to a place where the guy he drives around is going to treat Walter like an equal. No. And so when he looks, he's going, I have no hopes of promotion at work. I don't have a job that's fulfilling. I don't see how we get out of this apartment because, Mama, you've lived here for 40 some years. You only wanted to be here 6 months and you've never left. I got a son that sleeps in the living room. We use this metaphor to capture how Walter sees things. That he's sort of lost and there's no direction. Think in your own sense, right? You're a junior in high school. What's your next step? Being a senior. What's the next step after that? Could be college. Does it have to be college? Nope. Could be the military. What could come after that if it's not college or the military? What's another option? You get a job. What's another option? You go to trade school, or you apprentice.
Homeless.
Here's where I'm showing. Right now, You may not know what you want to do, but there are clear signs of what you can do. The paths are available. Walter's finding himself at 33, looking around, and there's nothing. And remember, this speech is after Mama has told him, no, we're not doing the liquor store. We're not putting our money there. That was Walter's direction. But now he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go. The metaphor helps to capture how he's feeling. And we do that. We use metaphors in our writing and even in our speech, because ultimately the whole purpose of communication is to connect with someone else, to get them to feel the way that you do. Think about when we talked about poetry, and we said poetry is all about experience and that shared nature. A metaphor like this helps Walter to express the fact that he's lost rather than just saying it. If he says he's lost, okay, but he feels like he can control the meaning a little more if he can make it make sense to Mama. Because she doesn't. She said, understand what? She doesn't see why he's bothered. We're going to get a little more into that. Walter now talks about number 4. If his life is a big blank space full of nothing, his future, he's going to contrast it in the next bunch of lines with what he sees out in the rest of the world. He says, Mama, sometimes when I'm downtown and I pass them cool, quiet-looking restaurants where them white boys are sitting back and talking about things, sitting there turning deals worth millions of dollars. Sometimes I see guys don't look much older than me. So if he sees his future as this big blank space full of nothing, what does he contrast it with?
With people getting their
Huh?
Like people getting their future done.
Yes. What kind of people?
Which white people?
And I want to use this word specifically. White boys. Walter's 33. He expresses at the end of that these people that are doing this look younger than him. But to help them make the point, calls them boys. Again, guy-heavy room. You're all 16, 17. Have you ever had an experience of a man calling you a boy? How's that feel? Like now. Like I'm not talking about, oh, they did that when I was 7. But like now, somebody looks at you and says, hey, boy, come here. Yeah. Walter wants it to be. He wants to undercut this fact that he feels lost, but he sees these boys that aren't. And he also points out that they're white intentionally. Walter understands that part of this issue that he's having has to do with his race. And Mama's going to kind of explore that a bit. But Walter's going, I see these boys, they're turning deals worth millions of dollars. How much money did he need for the liquor store? $10,000. But he sees these deals that he thinks they're turning for millions. All I'm looking for is a little bit, and these boys are playing bigger than that. It's why he feels lost. I watch people that are able to do stuff, and seemingly they do it with ease. Why can't I? I think all of us have been there at some point where we get frustrated because we can't do something as easily as someone else. And that other person, we make them the enemy to some degree. We go, oh, I hate them. And Walter's getting there. We notice that we're going to switch here. Walter's going to talk about and expand on this idea of these boys that are making money. Mama asks a question, why do you talk about money so much? And again, we come here to a metaphor in number 5. Walter says that money equals what? This is the conclusion of everything that we have here, because for Walter, he sees money as opportunity. He sees money as their way out. And so he says to Mama, money is life, as though she doesn't get it or she doesn't understand that. And we're going to see that this is going to switch because Mama is now going to present her response. She says, so now it's life. Money's life. Once upon a time, what used to be life?
Freedom.
Freedom. We need to see the shift that's going to happen here as Mama is going to take over this speech for a second. Walter has expressed his views, but remember, if this is 19, even if we say this is 1955, let's just put the ballpark out there, right? Walter is in his mid 30s, which means he was born when? And if we just assume, if Walter's in his 30s, it's a safe assumption to say that Mama is at least in her mid 50s, if not 60, which means she would have been born roughly 1900s, maybe earlier. Mama has a southern part to her accent. What did Mama probably experience that Walter maybe didn't as strongly? Okay, you're a little too, we're a little too late for slavery, but definitely the Jim Crow South. Now, I'm not saying that Chicago is a wonderland where no one is racist. No. But Mama's going to express why, to her, freedom is life here. Walter has had an opportunity. Now, it might not have been as great as what Mama had. You know, it's not a great experience. It's not as good as what Benita has. But compared to what Mama had to deal with, she sees freedom as life. And she's going to talk about that here. So we see these two contrasting metaphors for how we should view life. And Mama's going to talk about the difference of opinion here. And number 7 is going to ask you that. What does this difference of opinion show about these characters' relationship and their values? And so let's look at what Mama has to say here. She says, something has changed. You something new, boy. In my time, we was worried about not being lynched and getting to the north if we could, and how to stay alive and still have a pinch of dignity too. Now here comes you and Benita, talking about things we never even thought about hardly, me and your daddy. You ain't satisfied or proud of nothing we done. I mean, that you had a home, that we kept you out of trouble till you was grown, that you don't have to ride to work on the back of nobody's streetcar. My children, but how different we've done become. What does this difference in opinion about the meaning of life show about these two characters and about their values?
Mama cares more about the how she's alive and her kids are given more of a better future.
Mm-hmm.
And like how they don't have to experience what she had to experience.
Yeah, and so we have that end. Mama is more concerned with the fact that, we have provided for you. We have done what we can. You didn't have to experience some of that extreme that we did. What's a word we could use to describe Walter? Now, it might be a little bit of a push, but if Mama is so concerned about life and experience, and Walter says that life is about money,
Greedy.
maybe not greedy. What about materialistic? Now, it's not that he wants things. Often materialism comes to possessing or owning things, but we could definitely say that Walter has more of a focus on profit, on money as his way to find comfort, rather than being focused on what he has. If you think about, trying to think how best to do this. Some people don't need things to be happy. People can make them happy. Relationships can make them happy. They're happy with what they have. But other people need something more. They need something tangible to prove how someone feels or what the bit is. I think about girls who, would say no to an engagement because the ring isn't big enough. I know that seems really stupid, but it probably happens somewhere. Or people that, it's their birthday and they're not happy because they didn't get the number of gifts they expected. versus the people that are like, I don't need gifts. Gifts are things. We see two different sets of values here, and they're at odds. Walter feels one way about how things could be, and he's looking at the potential. I want to provide and I want to do. Because Walter has a very defined sense of what it is to be a man. Men provide, men lead. But notice that Mama's is more focused on a maternal sense. I care for my family. I care about life. I care about the freedom that we've eked out. And so these two characters, they can't understand each other to some degree because they're coming at it from two different perspectives. And so when Mama talks about you're something different, have your parents ever looked at you and kind of said the same thing? Where they're like, I don't understand your generation, or I don't understand that way that you think, or that thing that you have, or anything like that? Grandma, that's even better. Generations see things differently. Think about how your generation is extremely progressive in terms of views with gender and sexuality. And even to some degree, so Dr. V brought this up, that he's like, this generation isn't afraid to go up to the principal of the school and be like, why are we doing things this way? This is wrong. And he's like, I couldn't imagine going up to my principal when I was in school and asking any kind of question about him about what was happening. Like, no. And it's not that you're wrong. You aren't afraid to express your voice. It's a difference. So when Mama's showing this, she's showing that disconnect that's happening. And so at the end, Walter comes back to this and he says, Mama, you just don't understand. You just don't understand. And so question 8 asks, what doesn't Mama understand? Could be Walter. Could be his need to provide. Mama doesn't get that Walter feels that need to provide for his family. He wants to get ahead. He needs a direction. He needs support. But Mama sees that support is already there. She's already done. So as we look at this, we've pulled apart this passage. You have all of these answered now. What we're going to do next week is turn this around and look at how would we write an essay over how the author creates meaning in just this passage. What we're going to do is have 2 paragraphs that are already done and finished. And then the last 2 paragraphs, we're going to write together. They're fill in the blank. But everything you need is right here. We've already done all the work that we need to fill in the blanks on next week's paragraphs. Shut this off. As we get